SCX24s are pretty capable out of the box, but upgraded, they're a whole different rig. But with the upgrades comes a little bit more expense. For example, these axles are pretty expensive compared to the factory setup. So what if I told you there's a way to take this stock factory front axle and give it a similar turning radius of these big expensive Muse axles? And the best part is it's only $14 for these plus 4mm, so you'll also get a wider stance. So we've picked up these OGRC plus 4mm axle shafts. They swapped the pin style setup for a U-joint style setup, which will allow us to get better turning radius without those pesky little pins popping out and just everything falling apart. So with all that being said, let's head into the workbench and I'll show you guys exactly how to do it. So this upgrade is pretty easy. You obviously aren't gonna need a ton of things, but there's a few things you're gonna need. So you're obviously gonna need your SCX24, whether it's got the stock axles under it. If not, you're gonna need a set of stock axles. So we have these slightly upgraded factory housings. Front and rear, they got a little bit of brass and an Emax servo. Then you're going to need some U-joint style axle shafts to ditch that pin setup. So I went with the OGRC plus 4mm ones. I'll link these and the normal ones down below in the description if you want to pick up a set for yourself. These come with the axle shafts and then the spacer since they are the plus 4mm. And then we're actually going to be cutting or grinding down the inside of this housing here. So to do that, you're either going to need a pair of cutters. I think Money Pit RC was the one who did it with like some 3D printed snips. Then I'm going to use a Dremel just because it's a little bit easier. And first we're going to take off the steering. Now with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and take off one of the knuckles. I'm going to do one side of this at first so that way I can show you a before and an after. That's the easiest way I know how to compare it because I don't have two sets to do this too. But to take that off, you just take off the screw on the top and the screw on the bottom and the knuckle comes off. In there will be the two-part axle shaft with the pin setup. That's what we're going to be getting rid of today. I'll go ahead and remove that and show you what I'm talking about here. So here you can see the two-part axle shaft. It has this little pin on the very end there, and then it just goes into the other part, like the outer shaft there. Pretty okay setup, I guess, on a stock axle, but with the angle we're going to be getting, we're going to need these U-joint style setups. So now that we have the axle shaft out and we have the knuckle off, you're going to go ahead and get your cutters or your grinders, and on this inner C, I don't really know what you would call it here, bucket, you're going to go ahead and pretty much grind that down or cut it out 1mm, 2mm, somewhere in that range. And now that you've done that, what you're going to do is basically just reassemble everything with your new axle shafts. And what that's going to do is allow it to turn a lot further before the knuckle binds up with the axle housing. So I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this now, and then I'll show you a little before and after once we get some tires slapped on it. So here we have the new setup. On the right here is the trim side, and on the left is the not trim side. As you can see, it is turned a little bit further. Now I'm not sure the exact amount of extra steering angle you get, but realistically, any extra steering is definitely nice. Now, it's not these Muse isokinetic angles. However, for such a cheap mod, this is a pretty big improvement, and these stock axles definitely benefit from a better turning radius because, let's be honest, it kind of sucks out of the box. So this is the part number for what I have used, and I will link it down below in the description as well, so you guys can check that out if you want to pick up a set for yourself. I would definitely say it's worth it because you get the upgraded axle shaft with the U-joint style, you ditch those pins, and then you also get better steering angle, which definitely helps on these little crawlers. That was one of my biggest issues with these things out of the box, was just the horrible steering radius. But that basically wraps up this video. So I do want to say, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching the videos. The support on these last few videos has been really, really crazy. We have so many projects coming out. We've got a ton of projects lined up with the SCX24s. We got some SCX10 stuff. We got an Optic H10 video coming soon. We actually have a few of those, and I'm pretty excited about those because our Optic H10 is about to totally change. We also have some SCX30 stuff planned in the future that will be coming whenever we get our SCX30s. We've ordered a couple of them, and we have some really cool parts on the way for that. So as always, thank you guys so much for watching these videos, and I will see you in the next one.